Strasbourg in November smells like rain and roasted chestnuts, and the river. The cathedral spire pierces the fog like a needle through fabric. I've walked these cobblestones for decades, longer than the current mayor has been alive, longer than the tram lines have existed. This city changes and doesn't change. The half-timbered houses remain. The storks return every spring. And people continue their quiet sufferings in rented rooms and inherited apartments. Tonight I'm heading to the Petite France Quarter. To the top floor of a narrow building on Rue de Dentelles. Number 47. The attic apartment with the mansard window that opens just enough for a determined cat. Elise Beaumont lives there. 53 years old. Piano teacher. Widow for 2 years, though widow feels like too gentle a word for what she is. Survivor, perhaps. Or refugee. She spent 28 years married to Jean-Claude Beaumont, a man who drank himself into hallucinations and died exactly the way everyone knew he would, slowly, painfully, taking everyone down with him. I've been watching her for weeks. She teaches from her apartment, 6 students, ranging from a 7-year-old who can barely reach the pedals to a retired dentist who dreams of playing Chopin. The upright piano sits by the window. When she plays, really plays, not teaching, the sound drifts into the street. Satie. Debussy. Ravel. The kind of music that sounds like memory. But that's not why I'm going. I'm going because 3 days ago, I saw her in the Parc de l'Orangerie with a man. He was younger, maybe 45. Tall, thin, with that particular French awkwardness of men who read too much poetry and don't know what to do with their hands. He brought her flowers. Not expensive ones, just daisies from the market. And when he gave them to her, she looked terrified. Terrified of flowers. That's when I knew she needed a visit. The building is easy to climb. Old stone, plenty of ledges. The mansard window on the top floor is open, just a crack. Elise always keeps it open, even in November. Says she needs air. What she needs is to feel like she can escape. 20 years of marriage to Jean-Claude taught her to always leave and exit. I squeezed through. The attic is small. Slope ceilings. Exposed beams. The piano dominates the main room. Sheet music everywhere. A tiny kitchen. A bedroom barely big enough for the bed. But it's hers. Completely hers. No bottles hidden in cabinets. No smell of stale alcohol. No photographs of Jean-Claude. She's sitting at the piano. Not playing. Just sitting. Staring at her hands. Time to make myself known. Elise sat at the piano at 11:47 p.m. with her hands resting on the keys but making no sound. On the music stand in front of her sat a piece she'd been trying to learn for 6 weeks. Forest Nocturne No. 6. She could play it mechanically. Could hit every note. But it was supposed to sound like longing, and every time she tried, it just sounded like fear. On the small table beside the piano sat a vase with daisies. 3 days old now. Starting to wilt. She should throw them out. She'd meant to throw them out yesterday. And the day before. But every time she reached for them, she remembered the way Laurent had smiled when he handed them to her. For you, Elise. Just because. Just because. As if flowers needed no reason. As if kindness was simply something people did. She'd stammered a thank you. Held them awkwardly. Spent the entire walk home wondering what he wanted. What the catch was. Why a 45-year-old architect, successful, unmarried, kind, would bring flowers to a 53-year-old widow with gray hair and lined hands and a life that had been used up long before it ended. That's when she heard the sound. A soft thump. Like something landing. She turned. A gray cat sat on her desk, the small wooden desk where she kept her student files and invoices. It was looking at her with enormous golden eyes, completely calm, as if appearing in a 5th-floor attic apartment through a mansard window was the most natural thing in the world. Mon Dieu, Elise whispered. How did you? The cat tilted its head. Didn't move. Elise stood. Her knees protested. They always did lately. She walked slowly to the desk, expecting the cat to bolt. It didn't. just sat there, tail wrapped neatly around its paws, watching her approach. "You shouldn't be here," she said in French. Then, feeling foolish, added in a whisper, "Neither should I, probably." The cat blinked slowly. The way cats do when they're settling in for a long stay. Elise looked at the window. Still open. The November air was cold. She should close it. But something stopped her. Maybe the same thing that kept her from throwing out the flowers. "Are you hungry?" she asked. The cat didn't respond. She went to the kitchen anyway, 3 steps away, that's how small the apartment was, and opened the small refrigerator. Inside, milk, butter, half a baguette, some cheese, leftover ratatouille from yesterday. She put some cheese on a saucer. Brought it back. The cat sniffed it delicately, then looked up at her as if to say, "Really? Cheese?" "I'm sorry," Elise said, and surprised herself by meaning it. "I don't have much. I don't usually. I don't have visitors." The cat jumped from the desk to the piano bench. Sat exactly where Elise had been sitting moments before. "That's my seat," she said. But she didn't move to reclaim it. Instead, she sat on the floor, the old wooden floor that creaked when she walked, and leaned against the wall. The cat observed her from the bench. Then, as if making a decision, it jumped down and walked over. Sat just out of reach. They looked at each other. "You want to know about the flowers," Elise heard herself say. "Everyone wants to know about the flowers." The cat's ear twitched. "His name is Laurent. Laurent Mercier. He's an architect. We met 6 months ago at the Marché de Noël. No, not the Christmas market. It was summer. The organic market on Saturday mornings. He was buying tomatoes. I was buying herbs. We reached for the same bunch of basil." She smiled. It felt strange on her face. Like a muscle she'd forgotten how to use. "He apologized. I apologized. He insisted I take the basil. I insisted he take it. The vendor, old Madame Rousseau, she laughed and gave us each a bunch. Said young people these days are too polite." Elise's smile faded. "Young people. I'm 53 and she called me young. Laurent is 45. Younger than me. Younger than Jean-Claude was when he died. But Madame Rousseau, she's 78. To her, we're children." The cat moved closer. Not quite touching. But close enough that Elise could feel its warmth. We started talking. About basil, of all things. He said he was making pistou. I said I was making ratatouille. He asked if I lived nearby. I said yes, just up the street. And then, her voice caught. Then he asked if I'd like to have coffee sometime. She pulled her knees to her chest. The floor was cold through her thin dress. I said yes. I don't know why I said yes. I never say yes. But I did. And we met. And it was nice. He didn't talk too much. Didn't ask intrusive questions. Just talked about his work, about the city, about the new restoration project at the cathedral. Normal things. Easy things. The cat settled beside her. Not in her lap. Just beside her. We've had coffee 6 times now. And last week he asked if I'd like to have dinner. Real dinner. At a restaurant. And I panicked. Made up an excuse about a student recital. He said that's fine, another time. And 3 days ago, he brought me flowers. Elise reached out, slowly, carefully, and touched the cat's head. It allowed this. Even leaned into her hand slightly. I haven't been on a date in 30 years. She whispered. Haven't been with anyone but Jean-Claude since I was 25. And now there's this man, this kind, gentle, younger man, who brings me flowers and asks me to dinner and looks at me like I'm someone worth looking at. Her voice broke. And all I can think is, what does he want? What's wrong with him? Why me? The cat shifted. Pressed more firmly against her side. Elise's hand continued stroking its fur, soft, warm, real. I should tell you about Jean-Claude, she said quietly. Everyone in Strasbourg knew Jean-Claude. The drunk. The artist who never finished anything. The man who saw things that weren't there. She stared at the opposite wall. At the single photograph she'd kept, not of Jean-Claude, but of her parents. Both dead now. Dead before Jean-Claude. They never knew she'd become this. We met when I was 23. I was studying at the conservatoire. Piano performance. I was good. Really good. My teacher said I could have a career. Could play professionally. But then I met Jean-Claude at a cafe near the cathedral. He was painting watercolors of the buildings. He had this intensity. This way of seeing the world that felt profound. Romantic. The cat purred. Low and steady. He was 31. 8 years older. He said I inspired him. Said my playing was like light made into sound. He painted while I practiced. We'd spend hours in my tiny student room, me at the borrowed keyboard, him with his paints. It felt like art. Like we were creating something together. She paused. The apartment was very quiet. Just the distant sound of the city. A car. Voices. The cathedral bells marking midnight. We married 6 months later. Small ceremony. My parents didn't approve. They said I was too young, that I barely knew him. But I thought they didn't understand. Thought it was love. The real kind. The kind that transcends logic. Her hand stilled on the cat's head. The drinking started almost immediately. Or maybe it had always been there and I hadn't noticed. At first it was wine with dinner. Then wine after dinner. Then wine before dinner. Then it wasn't wine anymore. It was vodka. Whiskey. Anything he could find. The cat opened its eyes. Looked at her. I stopped performing. Got pregnant. Miscarried at 4 months. Got pregnant again. Miscarried at 3 months. The doctor said it was stress. Said I needed to rest. To take care of myself. But how do you rest when your husband drinks until he falls down the stairs? When he spends the rent money on bottles? When he screams at paintings that only he can see? Her voice was flat now. Reciting facts. I started teaching instead. Private lessons. Children mostly. The money was steady. Enough to pay rent, buy food, hide bottles from Jean-Claude when he was looking for more. I became very good at hiding things. Bottles. Bruises. The truth. The cat stood. Walked in a small circle. Lay back down with its head on Elise's thigh. He wasn't violent. Not physically. People always ask that. They want the story to be simple, abusive drunk, suffering wife. But it wasn't simple. He never hit me. Never even raised his hand. But he consumed everything. Every bit of energy, money, hope. Every day was about managing him. Is he drunk? How drunk? Can I leave him alone? Is he seeing things again? She stroked the cat's head. Its ears. The soft fur under its chin. The hallucination started about 15 years in. He'd see people who weren't there. Would have conversations with them. Sometimes they were benign, old friends, his dead mother. Sometimes they were terrifying. Once he was convinced there were men in the apartment, trying to take his paintings. He barricaded us in the bedroom for 6 hours. Elise closed her eyes. I called the ambulance that time. They took him to the psychiatric ward. Kept him for 2 weeks. The doctor said it was alcohol-related psychosis. Said if he stopped drinking, the visions would stop. Gave him medication. Made him promise to attend AA. She opened her eyes. The cat was still there. Still warm. Still real. He lasted 3 days after they released him. 3 days sober. Then he found the bottle I'd hidden, stupidly, uselessly hidden, in the back of the cabinet. And it started again. The apartment felt smaller suddenly. The slope ceilings pressing down. I thought about leaving. Thought about it every day. Every single day for 20 years. I'd pack a bag in my head. Figure out where I'd go. What I'd take. How I'd tell him. But I never did it. Never actually left. The cat made a small sound. Not quite a meow. Almost questioning. You want to know why? Elise's voice got harder. Because I was raised Catholic. Because my mother told me marriage is forever. Because my father said women who leave their husbands are selfish. Because the priest said suffering is holy. Because everyone in our neighborhood knew Jean-Claude, knew he was sick, and they'd say poor Elise, such a saint, and I'd smile and say it's not so bad and die a little more inside. She was crying now. Silent tears that fell onto the cat's fur. And because her voice broke completely. Because part of me believed I deserved it. Believed that if I'd been a better wife, a better woman, he wouldn't have needed to drink. That if I'd been more patient, more understanding, more something, I could have saved him. The cat shifted. Pressed its face against her hand. He died 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer? The doctor said it was the drinking, decades of it, destroying his body from the inside. He lasted 6 months after diagnosis. 6 months of hospitals and morphine, and him seeing things that weren't there even when he was sober. The visions never left. Even at the end. She wiped her face with her sleeve. The last thing he said to me, he was barely conscious, the cancer had spread to his brain. He looked at me and said, "I'm sorry I ruined you." And I said, her voice went to a whisper. I said, "You didn't ruin me." But he did. He absolutely did. The room was very still. The cat purred against her thigh. After he died, everyone expected me to fall apart. To grieve properly. To be the devoted widow. But I felt. She struggled for the word. Relief. Pure, shameful relief. I went to the funeral. Wore black. Accepted condolences. And inside I was thinking, it's over. It's finally over. She looked at the cat. For 6 months, I did nothing but teach and sleep. Didn't go out. Didn't see friends. Just existed. And then one day, I woke up and realized I'm free. For the first time since I was 25, I'm free. And I'm 53 years old and I don't know who I am anymore. The cat stood. Stretched. Walked to the piano bench and jumped up. Sat looking at the keys. Elise pushed herself off the floor. Her knees protested again. She walked to the piano, sat beside the cat. I started playing again. Really playing. Not just teaching scales and simple pieces. I played everything I'd abandoned 30 years ago. Chopin. Rachmaninoff. Ravel. Hours every day. My neighbors complained. I didn't care. For the first time in decades, I didn't care what anyone thought. She touched middle C. The note rang out clear and true. And then I met Laurent. At the market. Over basil. And he looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw myself reflected in his eyes. Not Jean-Claude's wife. Not the piano teacher. Just Elise. The cat placed a paw on the keys. A discordant note sounded. Elise smiled. He's younger than me. 45. Never married. He says he never found the right person. His friends think he's too picky. Too romantic. He reads poetry. Designs buildings that he says honor the past while embracing the future. He's earnest in a way that feels almost painful. She played a chord. Then another. Not a piece. Just sounds. And he's kind. Impossibly kind. He asks about my students. Remembers their names. He brought flowers just because. He opened the door for me at the cafe and I actually flinched. Flinched. Because I'm so unused to courtesy that basic kindness feels like a threat. The cat jumped onto the keys. Walked across them. A cascade of random notes. Get off, Elise said, but without heat. The cat ignored her. Settled in the middle of the keyboard, forcing her to stop playing. Fine. You want me to talk instead of play? I'll talk. She leaned back. The bench creaked. Laurent asked me to dinner. A real dinner. I said no. Made up an excuse. And he smiled, this sad little smile, and said maybe another time. And I've been thinking about that smile for 3 days. The cat's tail swished back and forth, hitting random keys. I want to say yes. God, I want to say yes. I want to sit across from him at a restaurant and drink wine and laugh and feel like a woman instead of a survivor. But every time I think about it, I hear my mother's voice. You're too old for romance. You're a widow. Act like it. She touched the cat's back. It allowed this. And I think, what if Laurent sees who I really am? What if he realizes I'm damaged? Used up? That I wasted 30 years on a man who drank himself to death? What if he finds out I can't have children, that my body gave up trying after the second miscarriage? What if he learns about the panic attacks, the insomnia, the way I still hide money in strange places because Jean-Claude trained me to expect disaster? The cat turned its head. Looked at her directly. You think I'm making excuses, Elise said. You think I'm afraid. The cat blinked slowly. Of course I'm afraid. I'm terrified. I'm 53 years old. I have gray hair. I have wrinkles. I have a body that's tired and a heart that's been broken so many times I don't know if it works anymore. Why would he want me? Why would anyone want me? The cat stood. Walked along the keys, another discordant melody, and jumped into Elise's lap. She caught it instinctively. Heavy. Warm. It settled against her chest, purring so loud she could feel it vibrate through her ribs. My mother would be horrified. She whispered into the cat's fur. Catholic women don't date younger men. Don't have romance. Don't want things. We serve. We suffer. We endure. That's our purpose. The cat's purring intensified. But I'm so tired of enduring. So tired of being the good woman. The patient wife. The devoted widow. I want. Her voice caught. I want to be selfish. I want to go to dinner. I want to hold hands in public. I want to be kissed. I want to feel alive before I'm too old to remember what that feels like. She held the cat tighter. It didn't protest. Laurent doesn't know about Jean-Claude. Not really. He knows I'm a widow. That my husband died of cancer. But he doesn't know about the drinking. The hallucinations. The years of slow destruction. And I don't know how to tell him. Don't know how to say, I was married for 28 years and never knew what love felt like. The cat pulled back. Looked at her with those golden eyes. What if I'm too late? Elise whispered. What if I wasted my best years and now all that's left is this tired woman with broken dreams and a rented attic and students who will grow up and forget me? The cat placed a paw on her chest. Right over her heart. You think I'm being dramatic, she said. But her voice was softer now. You think the heart still works. The cat meowed. Clear and insistent. Elise laughed. It came out watery. You're very presumptuous for a stray cat who appeared through my window. She stood. Carried the cat to the window. The November air rushed in, cold, clean, smelling of rain and distant wood smoke. I need to tell you something else, she said to the night. To the cat. To herself. About Jean-Claude. Something I've never told anyone. The cat waited. A year before he died. Maybe less. He had one of his episodes. Seeing things. He was in the kitchen. I was here, at the piano. He started screaming. I ran in. He was cowering in the corner, staring at something I couldn't see. He looked at me and said, They're here for me. The men. They've come to take me away. She held the cat tighter. And I said, her voice dropped to barely a whisper. I said, Good. Let them take you. I hope they do. And he looked at me. Really looked at me. And for just a moment, he was sober. Really sober. He saw me. And he saw what he'd done. And he started crying. A tear fell onto the cat's fur. I held him while he cried. While he apologized. While he promised to stop drinking. And I felt nothing. Nothing. Just exhaustion. Just the weight of 27 years pressing down. And I thought, I wish you would die. I wish you would just die and set us both free. She was sobbing now. Full, heaving sobs. And then he did die. 6 months later. And I got my wish. And I've been trying ever since to figure out if that makes me a monster. If wishing someone dead, even someone who destroyed you, is unforgivable. The cat twisted in her arms, pressed its head under her chin, purred so loud it drowned out the sound of her crying. Laurent doesn't know any of this, she said when she could speak again. He sees me as this elegant woman who plays piano and has a charming attic apartment. He doesn't see the damage, the guilt, the shame of staying too long. The cat pulled back, looked at her. You think I should tell him? Elise said. You think honesty is what matters? The cat blinked. But what if I tell him and he runs? What if he realizes I'm not worth the complication? What if? The cat placed its paw over her mouth. Gentle but firm. Elise stopped talking. They stood like that for a long moment. The cold November air. The distant city sounds. The cat's paw on her lips. Then, slowly, Elise pulled the paw away. Kissed it. Just once. Maybe, she whispered. Maybe I could try. Maybe I could say yes to dinner. Maybe I could be honest. Maybe I could risk it. The cat purred. Approval, maybe. Or just warmth. I'm terrified, she admitted. Absolutely terrified. What if I've forgotten how to be loved? What if I'm too damaged? What if my body doesn't work anymore? What if I disappoint him? The cat settled back against her chest. Patient. Steady. But maybe, Elise's voice got stronger. Maybe being terrified is okay. Maybe I don't have to be perfect. Maybe I can just be honest. Tell him about Jean-Claude. About the drinking. About the years I lost. And if he stays, he stays. If he doesn't, at least I tried. She looked down at the cat. At the city beyond. At the mansard window that let in light and air and apparently stray cats. I spent 30 years in prison, she said quietly. A prison of my own making. Built from duty and shame and fear and what other people thought. And now the door is open. I'm free. And I'm standing here terrified of walking through it. The cat's eyes half closed. That peaceful, meditative look cats get. You're right, Elise said. You're absolutely right. It's time. She carried the cat back to the piano. Set it gently on the bench. Then she went to the small table. Picked up her phone. Found Laurent's number. Her hands shook as she typed. Laurent. Thank you for the flowers. They're beautiful. I'd like to say yes to dinner. How about Saturday? She stared at the message. Her thumb hovered over send. I'm 53. She whispered to the cat. Is that too old to start over? The cat jumped onto the keys. A loud, discordant crash of notes. As if to say, don't be ridiculous. Elise laughed. Really laughed. The sound filled the small attic. She pressed send. Elise will meet Laurent for dinner on Saturday. She'll wear the blue dress she bought after Jean-Claude died but never wore because it felt too joyful. She'll tell him about Jean-Claude, not everything, not the first time, but enough. Enough for him to understand. And he'll listen. He'll reach across the table and take her hand. He'll say, "Thank you for trusting me." He won't run. Won't judge. He'll see her, the real her, damaged and brave and beautiful, and he'll stay. It won't be perfect. She'll have panic attacks. He'll be patient but sometimes not patient enough. They'll fight about her need for space and his need for closeness. She'll cry over stupid things, a bottle of wine, a raised voice, nothing. But slowly, carefully she'll heal. She'll learn that love doesn't have to hurt. That kindness isn't weakness. That being vulnerable doesn't mean being destroyed. And maybe, eventually, she'll play for him. Not teaching. Really play. The 4 nocturnes she's been practicing. And this time it'll sound right. Like longing. Like hope. But that's months away. Tonight, she just needed permission. Permission to want more. Permission to risk. Permission to believe that 53 isn't too late for love. I jumped to the desk. Then to the windowsill. The mansard window is still open. The city spreads out below, lights and shadows and a million stories I haven't heard yet. There's a woman in the Orangery neighborhood I should visit. A doctor. 38. Works 90 hours a week. Hasn't slept properly in months. Thinks if she stops moving, she'll disappear entirely. Some people need to be told they're stronger than they think. Others need to be told it's okay to rest. Elise needed to be told it's not too late. That damage doesn't mean destroyed. That there's life after survival. I slipped through the window. Onto the roof. Into the Strasbourg night. Behind me, through the open window, I hear piano music. 4. The Nocturne. Still not perfect. But better. Tentative and hopeful and real. That's enough. For now. Elise stood at the window after the cat left. Watched it disappear into the November darkness like smoke. The city twinkled below. The cathedral was lit up, glowing against the night sky. Beautiful. Solid. Enduring. Her phone buzzed. Laurent. Saturday is perfect. 7 p.m.? I know a small place near the cathedral. Nothing fancy. Just good food and good wine. I'm really glad you said yes. She smiled. Typed back. 7 p.m. sounds wonderful. See you then. Another buzz. I've been hoping you'd say yes for weeks. I was starting to think maybe you weren't interested. Elise's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could say something light. Something easy. Or she could be honest. She typed. I'm very interested. Also very scared. It's been a long time. I'm a bit of a mess, actually. But I'd like to try. If you're patient with me. She hit send before she could second guess it. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. We're all a bit of a mess, Elise. That's what makes us interesting. I'll be patient. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. She read the message 3 times. Then she set down the phone and went to the piano. The 4 Nocturne. Page 1. She'd start from the beginning. Her hands settled on the keys. She took a breath. And she played. Not perfectly. There were still wrong notes. Still hesitations. But there was something else too. Something that hadn't been there before. Hope. Outside, the cathedral bells rang 1 in the morning. The November air was cold through the open window. But Elise didn't close it. She liked the feeling of air on her face. Like knowing she could leave if she wanted to. Like knowing she could stay because she chose to. She played until her hands were tired. Until the music said everything words couldn't. When she finally stopped, she looked at the wilting daisies on the table. Tomorrow she'd buy a proper vase. Keep them alive a little longer. Not because she had to. Because she wanted to. She went to bed. Slipped under the covers. No sleeping pills tonight. No white noise machine. Just the sound of the city. The distant traffic. The wind. And for the first time in 30 years, Elise Beaumont fell asleep smiling. Dreaming not of the past, but of Saturday at 7 p.m. Of blue dresses and small restaurants, and a man who brought her flowers just because. Of second chances. Of beginning again.